To me, happiness is less suffering. If we lack the ability to transform the pain within us, happiness cannot be attained. Anger Asterisk by Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh is a small book, yet it contains an energy that can change a person's entire life. It doesn't discuss abstract, far-fetched metaphysical theories, but instead offers concrete practices, from breath and steps to listening and speaking. In it, anger is not viewed as an enemy to be eliminated, but as a crying child in need of mindful embrace. If true happiness isn't found in wealth or power, but in the capacity to transform suffering, then the question is, do we have the courage to face the burning flame within us and turn it into a guiding light for ourselves and others? Chapter 1, Consuming Anger. When we think of anger, most of us only imagine it as a psychological state, a fire blazing within, consuming and eroding our peace. But if we look deeply, we'll see that anger doesn't just reside in our thoughts. It flows in our blood, pulses in every cell, nourished by what we eat, drink, watch, and listen to every day. Anger doesn't stand alone. It carries the imprints of both body and mind. Just as scientists realize a particle is both a wave and a particle, so too are body and mind inseparable. Therefore, when anger erupts, we shouldn't only look at our thoughts, but also at our body, how we have been feeding it for so long. Try looking at your meals, eggs, meat, milk, which seem harmless, but remember they carry the fate of animals living in confinement. In fear, a chicken spends its entire life in a cramped cage, unable to run or flap its wings, living in artificially shortened days and nights to lay more eggs. They go mad, pecking each other to blood and death. And we eat eggs, eat meat from these bodies filled with anger. When we put them in our mouths, we swallow their anger too. It's no wonder we become prone to outbursts, easily losing our balance. It's not just food. Pay attention to what we read, watch, and listen to. A film full of violence, a news report saturated with images of war, a conversation filled with complaints and bitterness. These are also food, just for the mind. An hour of reading the news, watching TV, or listening to grievances can make us feel full, but full of poison. And we will vomit it out with our own irritable words, our cold glances, our violent actions, our anger. Anger doesn't simply appear. It's nourished daily through seemingly small choices, a glass of wine when depressed, an action movie to kill time, an uncontrolled, overstuffed meal. All of these contribute to the energy flowing within us. Then, with a slight touch, it flares up like fire catching dry straw. We tend to believe that to relieve ourselves, we need to speak, to vent. But sometimes, that very venting adds fuel to the fire. A harsh word, an unconscious action will spark new anger from others. Two flames meeting will only burn the entire house down. To truly heal, we must return to ourselves, to how we consume each day. How to eat to lessen anger? First, eat less. When we eat slowly, chew carefully, savoring each bite, we realize we don't need that much. We only need half or even less. And when we eat less, we can choose more carefully. Organic foods, milk from naturally grazed cows, vegetables free of chemicals. When we eat mindfully, food becomes nourishing energy, not a source of anger. Eating is not just for the stomach, it's also for the mind. When chewing a piece of cake, we are aware that we are eating peace, eating happiness. We are not chewing unfinished projects, not chewing worries in our heads, not chewing old arguments, just chewing the cake. And suddenly, we find the taste multiplies. Even a dry piece of bread and a sip of milk become a feast if we eat mindfully. But this practice isn't just for adults. Children understand it too and need to participate. The whole family can discuss what to eat, what to watch, what to say, choosing healthy food, choosing programs to watch together, choosing stories that nurture faith instead of resentment. This way, we not only nourish ourselves, but also protect our loved ones from toxic energy. Anger cannot be separated from how we consume. Therefore, the practice of mindful consumption is the first path to caring for and transforming anger. Anger is like a seed deep in the earth. If we water it every day with toxic food, with films full of hatred, with stories overflowing with irritation, that seed will quickly sprout and grow into a large tree. At some point, just a small word, an unintentional gesture, will be enough for it to explode into a storm. But if we know how to stop, how to choose carefully, that seed will dry up, weaken. Instead of watering anger, we begin to water joy, peace, and gratitude. This is a daily decision. What to watch on TV, what to read on our phone, what to put in our supermarket cart, What words to say to our loved ones each decision seems small, but cumulatively, they shape our entire soul. In the 5 mindfulness trainings, the 5th training speaks about consumption. Many misunderstand it, thinking it's just advice not to drink alcohol. In reality, it's much broader. Consumption is everything we take into our body and mind. Alcohol, drugs, tobacco are just the visible parts. There are countless invisible toxins. A noisy song, a violent movie, a despairing news clip, or simply a conversation full of complaints. They also intoxicate, addict, and devastate. We often think that a little alcohol for fun is fine, a single harsh word does no harm, but that single time paves the way for a habit. Gradually, it turns into habit energy, carrying us along without our knowing. This habit energy is passed from father to son, from mother to grandchild, repeated through many generations. There is a story about a boy named Leo who once came to Plum Village to practice. He recounted that every time he stumbled or made a mistake, instead of being comforted, his father would scold him terribly. "You idiot, why did you do that?" He grew up with that wound, carrying those scolding words in his heart. But then one day, he almost yelled the exact same words at his little sister. Fortunately, through his practice, he stopped himself in time. He realized he was just repeating the vicious cycle of passing it on, and he decided to break it so as not to pass it to the next generation. We are the same. If we are not mindful, we will repeat what our parents did to us, perhaps even more severely, because anger doesn't disappear on its own. It always finds a way to be transmitted. Only mindfulness can cut that cord. Mindful eating and drinking is the first step. Not just eating less and mindfully selecting, but also eating with gratitude. When we hold a bowl of rice, we can see in it the sweat of the farmer, the rain, the sun, the convergence of heaven and earth. When we chew mindfully, we chew both happiness and anger. In that moment, anger has no ground to live. The practice of listening is as important as eating and drinking. When someone speaks to us with an irritated tone, we usually react immediately. But if we treat those words like a kind of food, we will be more cautious. We don't swallow everything. We learn to filter, to let go, to keep only what is necessary. Just as we wouldn't eat rotten meat, we don't need to swallow toxic words. Mindful consumption is not about depriving ourselves of joy. On the contrary, it opens up deeper joys. A simple meal can become a celebration of life. A gentle conversation can be more nourishing than noisy news reports. A quiet afternoon reading a book or walking in the garden can bring more peace to our minds than tens of hours wandering online. Anger is not an enemy. It is merely a consequence of what we take into ourselves. When we understand this, we no longer see anger as a mysterious, untamable force. We see it as something that can be cared for, that can be transformed. Start with the simplest things. Choose a meal, choose a piece of music, choose a conversation. Each such choice, if made mindfully, is a brick building the foundation for peace, day by day. We can turn a house full of the fire of anger into a lush green garden where anger is transformed into compassion. Asterisk Chapter 2. Putting out the flame of anger asterisk. There's an image I always carry in my heart, a house burning in the night, the flames engulfing the eaves. Running to find the arsonist does no good. The house will burn to ashes before you return. Anger within us is like this. Whenever someone hurts us, instinct urges us to retaliate, to make the other person suffer so we feel lighter. But that is an illusion, because the more we make the other person suffer, the more they retaliate, and the circle of fire spreads. There is only one thing to do: return to ourselves, extinguish the flame in our hearts. Anger is not a thin cloud, it is a real fire. It makes us tremble, tenses our muscles, quickens our breath, distorts our face. If there were a mirror in front of us, we would see our angry face is no different from a ticking bomb. That is the mindfulness bell. When we see ourselves distorted by anger, we know we need to stop, breathe deeply, and smile to return to our true form. If anger is suppressed, it becomes smoldering embers, burning slowly and deeply within. If it is unconsciously expressed, it will erupt into a fierce blaze, destroying everything around. There is only one path: embrace it like a mother embracing her crying child. When a baby cries hysterically in the middle of the night, the mother doesn't throw it out or yell at it to be quiet. She picks it up, holds it close to her chest, and soothes it with warm breath. Likewise, we need to embrace anger with mindful breathing. Breathe in, I know I am angry. Breathe out, I embrace my anger with all my gentleness. Look at a flower closing its petals before the sun appears. Only when the sun shines and photons gradually penetrate each petal does the flower open. Anger is the same. It is a tightly closed, bitter bud. Only when the light of mindfulness shines upon it does it slowly open, allowing us to see its deeper nature. A misunderstanding, a fear, or an old, unhealed wound. Anger needs to be cooked with patience, like cooking potatoes. You can't rush it, turn on the heat for 5 minutes and then turn it off. The potatoes will still be raw, inedible. Anger is the same. We need to sit still, breathe mindfully, walk in awareness for at least 15-20 minutes. The fire of mindfulness will gradually cook the anger, transforming it from destructive energy into nourishing material, understanding, compassion, and love. In this process, the most important thing is to remember that anger is not an enemy. It is a child in need of our care. It cries out not for us to hate it, but to be soothed by us. If we turn our back on it, it will scream louder. If we punish it, it will resist more. Only when we open our arms, breathe mindfully, and fully focus our attention on it will it calm down, like a baby in its mother's arms. And then we begin to see that the cause of anger doesn't necessarily come from the other person. Perhaps they merely touched an old wound within us. The same words might make one person laugh, but we become furious because the seed of anger in us is too large, too easily touched. When we see this clearly, we blame the other person less. We realize the root lies within ourselves. We begin to understand that the other person is only a secondary cause, while the primary cause is the seed of anger we haven't known how to care for. This understanding brings a cool breeze. We stop blaming, stop condemning. We begin to see the other person differently. They are also suffering. It is because of their suffering that they make us suffer. When we realize this, compassion awakens within us. We no longer want to punish, but to help. There was a 12-year-old boy named Alex who came to Plum Village one summer. He carried a wound from his father. Every time he stumbled or made a mistake, instead of being picked up, he was scolded. "You idiot, why like that?" Those harsh words were deeply imprinted, and he swore to himself that when he grew up, if he had children, he would never treat them that way. The next summer, he returned to Plum Village with his little sister. One day, the little girl fell from a hammock, blood trickling from her forehead. In that moment, anger flared up in him, his lips about to utter the scolding words, "You idiot," exactly as his father had. But thanks to months of practice, he managed to realize it wasn't him. It was just his father's habit energy reawakening in his body. He stopped, took a deep breath, and walked mindfully. In just a few minutes, he had a breakthrough. His father was also a victim of habit energy. He didn't want to make his son suffer, but didn't know any other way. Realizing this, the boy felt compassion for his father and decided to end that cycle. At 12, he had an insight that many people never reach in a lifetime. That story teaches us that anger is often not newly born in the present. It is a current flowing through many generations. We inherit pain, anger, and unhealed wounds from our parents and grandparents. If we are not mindful, we will inadvertently pass them on to our children and grandchildren. Only mindfulness can cut that chain. We are gardeners. Within each of us is a garden where flowers and weeds coexist. If neglected, weeds, garbage, and thorns will take over. But if we know how to return and care for it, how to pull weeds, how to compost waste, we will see flowers bloom. Anger is precisely the waste that needs to be composted to become fertilizer for the flowers of understanding and love. The miracle is that we don't need many years to transform. Sometimes, in just 15 minutes of mindful breathing, we can feel our face relax, our body soften, and compassion return. That is the power of practice. But one must truly commit as if it were a matter of life and death. If done superficially, we will get nowhere. Whenever anger arises, we can practice 3 sentences. "My dear, I am angry, I am suffering, and I want you to know that. I am trying to take care of my anger so I don't hurt you. I need your help to understand you more, to love you more." These 3 seemingly simple sentences can transform an entire relationship. Because instead of punishing, we show the other person our sincerity, our effort, and our need for companionship. It is an invitation to return, not an accusation. Anger not only harms us, it also harms those we love. If we don't know how to care for it, it will spread to them like fire. But if we know how to return, breathe, and embrace, we will prevent the fire from spreading and even turn it into a warming light. Caring for anger is also caring for the wounded child within us. Many pains come from childhood. When we were not listened to by our parents, not protected, that child is still there, crying silently in our hearts. Every time anger flares up, it is truly that child crying for help. If we know how to sit down, place a hand on our heart and whisper, "Dear little one, I am here, I will not abandon you," that child will calm down, and as it heals, anger will also gradually dissipate. Ultimately, anger teaches us one thing. Freedom does not come from defeating someone else, but from the ability to return and care for ourselves. A free person is someone who can breathe peacefully in the midst of a storm, smile in the heart of a fire. When we are that free, we are no longer victims of anger, but become illuminators. Chapter 3. The Language of True Love. We often underestimate the power of words. A single sentence can become a healing medicine, but it can also be a knife leaving a wound that is hard to heal. There are words uttered in anger, seemingly fleeting, but they can haunt a person for a lifetime, leaving deep scars in the heart. There are also very simple words, like a cool drop of water, capable of melting hatred and opening a closed heart to love. We often believe that the other person understands us without words. But the truth is, love, if not nurtured by communication, will gradually dry up. To love without speaking it, to care without expressing it, is like having fresh water in a sealed jar, only to have it evaporate over time. The language of love is not something that erupts spontaneously. It needs to be trained, requires the courage to speak truthfully, and the gentleness not to wound. How many times in anger have we said words aimed solely at hurting the other person? In that moment, we no longer want to understand, no longer want to love, we only want to punish. But when the fire of anger subsides, we feel regret. We wish we had remained silent, or at least spoken differently, but words once uttered are like arrows released from a bow they cannot be recalled. The language of love begins with truth, but the truth spoken must have the ability to heal. Truth without compassion is merely naked truth, and sometimes even cruel. For example, we might tell a loved one, "You're so selfish, you only think of yourself." That might be true to our feelings, but if said that way, the other person will retreat defensively, and the chasm between the two will widen. But if we stop, breathe, and then say, "I suffer because I feel like you don't care about me," that statement is also true, but it invites listening and empathy instead of creating more distance. To be able to speak the language of love, we must first know how to listen. For if we cannot hear the pain in the other person's heart, we will only speak in reaction from our ego. Listening is not to argue, not to wait for our turn to reply. Listening is simply to understand. And when we understand, the words we utter will naturally be healing. There is a simple but very powerful practice. When we realize the other person is suffering, we can say, "I know you are suffering, and I want to understand so I can love you more." Sometimes, just one sentence like that can bring tears and break down a long-standing wall of silence, because deep down, everyone simply wants to be acknowledged, seen, and understood. The language of love doesn't need flowery words or grand promises. The simpler it is, the more effective. But to speak those simple words, we need a calm heart, capable of producing mindfulness in the moment. For if the mind is still full of anger, every word will become a knife. Try once to sit down before your loved one, take 3 deep breaths, look them in the eyes, and say, "My dear, I am here, and I want you to know that I love you." Just that, no beating around the bush, no conditions, and then be silent, allowing those words to permeate the space like a raindrop soaking into dry earth. Perhaps the other person won't respond immediately. Perhaps they are still full of doubt. But if we continue to practice and repeat it many times, gradually the soil will soften and the seeds of love will sprout. The language of love also includes sincere apologies. Many people are afraid to apologize for fear of losing face or appearing weak. But a timely apology can save a relationship on the brink. And apologizing is not admitting that we are entirely wrong, but admitting that we have caused the other person to suffer and that we want to act differently. It is an act of the strong, not the weak. One of the most common misunderstandings is to think that love only resides in feelings. But if we love without knowing how to express it, that love can become a burden like a fire. If not cared for, it will burn fiercely and then die out. But if we know how to add wood at the right time and shield it properly, the fire will burn warmly and steadily. The language of love is that wood that feeds the fire. Many people choose silence in suffering, thinking that bearing it alone is a way to protect their loved ones. But that silence often turns into distance. The other person doesn't understand us, and then they suffer too. Those two parallel sufferings increasingly push us apart. Speaking out in love is the only way to break that cycle. We can practice with very short sentences. I suffer, and I want you to know that. I am angry, but I am trying to take care of my anger so I don't hurt you. I need your help to understand me more. These 3 sentences are like 3 bridges spanning the deep chasm of separation, creating an opportunity for the other person to draw closer. The truth is, no one can read our minds. We might wish that the other person should understand us without words, but that is an unrealistic expectation. Everyone has their own suffering, their own limitations. If we don't speak, they won't know. And that lack of knowledge, instead of protecting, often causes more misunderstandings. Speaking in the language of love also means taking responsibility for our emotions. Instead of saying, "You always drive me crazy," we can say, "I feel very angry when this happens." That small shift liberates both. It shows the other person that we are sharing our experience, not condemning them. And when they are not attacked, they will be more open to listening. The language of love is not only used in difficult times, it also needs to be present in everyday moments to nurture and prevent suffering. If we only wait until a storm breaks out to practice loving speech, it will be too late. But if we sow small seeds every day, then when storms come, the roots of love will be strong enough not to be uprooted. A sincere compliment, a simple thank you, a gentle reminder, these are daily tonics. They cost nothing but have the power to warm the other person's soul. When a wife hears her husband whisper, "Thank you for taking care of our family," or a child hears a father say, "I'm proud of you," these words are brief, but their effect spreads like a small light illuminating a dark room. Sometimes the language of love is silence, not an evasive silence, but a mindful silence full of presence. Simply sitting together, holding hands, breathing in unison, can be a deeper language than words. But for silence to become a language, we must be fully present. If we sit by someone but our mind wanders elsewhere, that silence is just an empty space. The language of love is a bridge between 2 hearts. No one teaches us this in school. Our parents may not have known it either, so we need to learn it from scratch, like learning a new language. At first, it might feel awkward and clumsy, but with regular practice, we will gradually become fluent. And when that language becomes natural, it will change the entire atmosphere of our family, our friendships, our community. Every word we speak can cause a seed in the other person to sprout. If we sow seeds of anger and resentment, the field within them will be full of weeds. If we sow seeds of love and compassion, the fruits of peace will grow within them. That is the responsibility and also the power of the language of love. When we speak in the language of love, the one nourished is not only the listener but also ourselves. Because when words come from a heart full of understanding and compassion, we feel light and peaceful. We know we are contributing a small part to making the world less suffering, and that itself nurtures the love within us. Chapter 4, Transformation. Every wave of anger is like a fire. If we just stand there watching the fire blaze, it will consume everything. If we add more fuel, it will burn even stronger. But if we know how to return, breathe, and look deeply, we will see that beneath that fire are seeds, invisible currents that nourish it, and we are perfectly capable of changing that current. Within our minds, there is a storehouse, like a garden. In it are seeds of anger, seeds of jealousy, but also seeds of love and seeds of understanding. Every time we water a seed, it will sprout and grow into an energy that overshadows whatever else is present. If we water anger every day with words of blame, by reading violent news, then the seed of anger grows into a large tree, covering the entire garden. But if we choose to water the flowers, choose to recognize and nurture what is beautiful, then the seeds of love will grow, casting cool shade over our souls. There is a simple covenant that can transform a family. Please do not water the seed of anger in me, and I will not water the seed of anger in you. We will both water the beautiful seeds together. Just that one promise, if kept, is enough to turn a life around. Because the anger within us doesn't need extra fuel, it's already too ready to erupt. If our loved one inadvertently waters it with bitter words, it will be hard for us to maintain peace. Conversely, if the other person reminds us with a gentle phrase, an encouraging word every day, Then the seed of love will grow strong enough to shelter us in stormy times. I remember a couple in Bordeaux. That day, after a sharing session, they drove home. For just over 10 minutes on the road, the husband began to practice watering the flowers. Instead of remaining silent or blaming, he tried to tell his wife positive things he genuinely saw. Each word he spoke was like a drop of water falling on dry earth. When they arrived home, their children looked at their mother in surprise. Her face seemed to light up, looking younger in just an hour. Thanks to being watered, she had refreshed. That story is not some strange magic. It merely shows the power of nourishing language. Transforming anger is not about suppressing it, nor is it about venting it to lessen it. It is a process of returning, breathing with it, looking deeply into it, and then transforming it into something different. Like trash. If left alone, it will stink and breed maggots. But if we gather it and compost it correctly, after a few months it becomes fertilizer. Anger is the same. When embraced with mindfulness, it becomes energy for understanding and love for transformation. We must start with ourselves. We often think the cause of our suffering is the other person, their words, their actions. But if we look closely, we will see that most anger comes from the seeds within us. The other person merely touches it. The main cause is our habit energy, our wounds, our smoldering fears. When we see this, we no longer place all the blame on others. We accept our part, and from there, anger subsides. Once it is calmed, we can reach out to help. Instead of waiting until the weekend or for a scheduled meeting, we can call right away. I have breathed, I have looked deeply, and now I see that you are not the main cause. I want you to know that. Just a few short words are enough to reassure, enough to open the door to communication. Don't wait until the distance is too great, because sometimes waiting just one day is enough for the seed of anger to grow out of control. Every time we breathe mindfully, walk mindfully, we are cooking our anger. Like a raw potato, it cannot be eaten immediately. Anger cannot disappear instantly. It needs time and patience. If we sit still, breathing in and out minute by minute, second by second, the fire of mindfulness will spread throughout our body and mind. In just 15 minutes, half an hour, or an hour, the energy of anger will change its nature. It becomes understanding, and from that, compassion arises. Transformation actually begins very subtly. At first, it's just a softened face, less hurried breathing, less cloudy eyes, then a small smile appears. A smile not forced, but arising from the body and mind returning to peace. At that moment, we already feel different, and only when we are different can we help the other person change. It's important that we cannot demand the other person change first. Often, when angry, we wait for them to apologize, wait for them to speak first. But if both wait, the distance only lengthens. We must be the one to initiate. We proactively light a lamp. When the other person sees the light, they will be less afraid to step out of the darkness. The practice of transformation also teaches us the art of timing. There are times when nothing should be said, because words at that moment would become fire. Wait until anger has subsided, until we have watered the flowers in our heart enough to feel compassion. Then speak. A single sentence at that moment has 100 times the power of a lecture delivered in anger. Remember the story of the couple in Bordeaux. In just 1 hour of watering flowers, the husband revitalized his wife. If he had chosen to blame or remain silent, that journey would have become an hour of concentrated suffering. The difference lies in the decision of which seed to water. Each of us has the power to choose whether to water flowers or weeds, and the result is whether our garden will bloom or be full of thorns. Transforming anger doesn't mean we will never be angry again. Anger still comes, just as rain still falls. But instead of letting the rain flood the house, we know how to channel the water into a reservoir, turning it into a source for watering the garden. Anger, if cared for, also becomes nourishing energy. And there's a miracle. When we know how to transform anger, our loved ones around us also benefit. Children see their parents stopping, breathing, and they will learn. Friends see us not retaliating with anger, and they feel at peace. The entire community changes just because one person chooses to start. When trash turns into flowers, we realize that nothing is wasted. Every tear, every bout of anger, if cared for, can become material for nurturing happiness. That is the simple yet profound miracle of practice. Chapter 5, Compassionate Communication. There are times when the silence in a house is heavier than any scolding. Two people sit next to each other, but the distance between them is immense. Not because love has ended, but because the thread of communication has been severed. If love is a river, then communication is the underground spring that nourishes it. Without communication, the river will dry up and love will become a desert. When someone is suffering, what they need most is not advice, and certainly not arguments to prove right or wrong. What they need is a heart that knows how to listen. Deep listening means we temporarily set aside our own views, temporarily set aside the need to argue, and simply be present as an empty vessel to receive every tear. When truly heard, the other person will feel lighter, and sometimes that alone is enough for their suffering to be halved. But listening is not easy. Because when we listen, we often seethe inside, wanting to react, wanting to defend. To listen deeply, we need the support of mindful breathing. Breathe in, I hear. Breathe out, I remain peaceful. And so, we become a clear mirror for the other person's voice to resonate without being distorted by prejudice. Just as listening, words of compassion are also a kind of medicine, some that heal, some that poison. Words can revive a dying relationship but can also kill a healthy love. Therefore, whenever preparing to speak, we need to ask, will these words cause the other person to suffer? Will they help ease their pain? If unsure, it's better to take a few more breaths, wait a little longer. Imagine a family meeting where everyone sits down with a commitment. No blaming, no attacking, just speaking the truth with the desire to build. In that atmosphere, the father might say, I realize I often lose my temper and make you children afraid. I want to change. The child might say, I feel sad when you scold me, but I still love you very much and want to be closer. Just those words alone can melt the ice, opening a new spring in the home. Compassionate communication is not about proving who is right or wrong, but about healing. When we say, I suffer because I feel like you don't care about me, that is a way to open the door. But if we say, you're selfish, you never care about me, that is a way to close the door. The difference lies only in the choice of words, but the results are two opposite worlds. Sometimes, words of compassion are so simple that we are surprised by their power, like the phrase, I know you are suffering, and I want to understand you more. Just that can bring tears because, deep within every human being, the need to be understood is even greater than the need to be loved. For without understanding, love is just an empty concept. Compassionate communication is not only for conflict, it needs to be present in everyday moments to nurture and prevent suffering. If we only wait until a storm erupts to practice loving speech, it's too late. But if we sow small seeds every day, then when storms come, the roots of love are strong enough not to be uprooted. A sincere thank you, a simple compliment, a gentle reminder, these are daily tonics. They cost nothing, but have the power to warm the other person's soul. When a wife hears her husband whisper, thank you for taking care of our family, or a child hears a father say, I'm proud of you, these words are brief, but their effect spreads like a small light illuminating a dark room. Sometimes, compassionate communication takes the form of silence, not an evasive silence, but a silence full of presence, sitting side by side, saying nothing, just holding hands and breathing in unison. That silence is a message. I am here for you. Sometimes, silence resonates more than 1,000 words. However, when suffering has accumulated for a long time, sometimes speaking directly is difficult. In that case, a letter can become a bridge. When writing, we have time to stop, breathe, and refine our words. We can write, I am suffering, but I don't blame you. I just want you to know and to find a way to change together. Such words, if written from a mindful heart, have the power to open doors that seemed tightly shut. In a monastic community, Sangha, compassionate communication is considered the bloodstream that nourishes harmony. Everyone commits to practicing loving speech and deep listening so that the community becomes a safe refuge. Otherwise, one person's suffering will quickly spread throughout the group. Speak so the other person suffers less. Listen so the other person feels lighter. If a sentence does not reduce suffering, wait. If a way of listening does not allow the other person to breathe, change it. And if a relationship is cracking, remember that a timely word of compassion can save everything. When we speak and listen with compassion, we not only save a relationship, but also contribute to healing the whole world. Because every harmonious family is a piece of peace in society. And when those pieces connect, the world will have a little less violence and a little more understanding and love. Chapter 6, Your Own Heart Sutra. Each of us has our own sutra, not written in words, not printed on paper, but etched into every gesture, every word, every way we live with each other. That sutra is penned by no one other than ourselves, every day. And when anger flares up, how we embrace it or release it, those are the very first lines in the Heart Sutra of our life. The Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra teaches that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. But if we only chant it without practicing, those words remain mere sounds. Anger is an opportunity to understand what emptiness means. When we are angry, we only see ourselves and the other person as separate, opposing entities. But when we look deeply, we see that if the other person suffers, we also suffer. If we are at peace, then the other person has a chance to be at peace. We and the other person cannot be separated. Anger only exists because we cling to the self. We think, I am right, you are wrong, I was offended, you must take responsibility. But when we breathe in, breathe out, we see that anger is merely a mental formation, not our entire being. It's like a cloud passing across the sky. The sky is not bound by the clouds, and our mind is not the anger. Seeing this, we can smile at anger instead of identifying with it. Imagine our heart as a mirror. When anger takes over, the mirror is covered in smoke. We can no longer clearly see ourselves or others. But if we sit still and breathe mindfully, the smoke gradually dissipates and the mirror becomes clear again, reflecting everything as it is. Anger, at that moment, no longer holds power. It is just a fleeting wisp of smoke. Your own Heart Sutra is the ability to live with that wisdom of non-self. When we clearly see that what we call self is merely the aggregation of our breath, our ancestors, our parents, and the conditions around us, then we cling less. And when we cling less, anger naturally dissolves because there is no longer a self to protect. What is there to be angry about? When was the last time you were so angry with someone you didn't want to see their face? Then one day, you heard they were seriously ill or faced a tragedy, and suddenly the anger vanished, replaced by compassion? That shows that anger is not our true nature, but just a passing cloud. Wisdom helps us see this clearly without waiting for a tragic event. Every time anger arises, we breathe, we smile, we remind ourselves, anger is not me, I am bigger than my anger. And in that moment, we are writing another line in our own Heart Sutra. A sutra no one else can chant for us, no one can amend for us. It's important to see that every instance of anger doesn't just come from the present. It carries the imprints of the past, of our ancestors, of habit energy passed down through many generations. When we are angry, it's not just us who are angry, but our father, our mother, our grandparents within us are also angry. Therefore, every time we embrace anger, not only are we healed, but our entire ancestral lineage within us is healed. That is the depth of the Heart Sutra we write every day. Anger often makes us want to punish, to make the other person hurt so they know how much we hurt. But when we look deeply, we see their suffering is the fertile ground for the actions that make us suffer. If we can open our hearts, embrace, and smile, we will see that the enemy doesn't truly exist. There are only suffering beings acting from a lack of understanding. And if we respond with anger, we only continue to nourish that suffering. But if we respond with compassion, we help break the cycle. Your Heart Sutra is not a long sermon, nor does it need philosophical concepts. It lies in how you stop before uttering a bitter word. It lies in your choice to listen instead of interrupting. It lies in the decision to place your hand on your chest and breathe instead of casting a hateful gaze. These actions write lines in a living sutra, more vibrant than any printed words. Someone once said, I have chanted the Heart Sutra 1,000 times, but only when facing anger did I understand the line form is emptiness, because then I clearly saw that anger has no separate entity. It arises dependent on conditions. And when those conditions change a breath and understanding, a smile anger also dissipates. Understanding that, he no longer feared anger each time it came. Instead of avoiding or suppressing it, he treated anger like a cloud it comes and goes. Your Heart Sutra is a testament to that ability. Every time you transform anger into understanding, hatred into love, you write another passage. And when that sutra is thick enough, those around you will also read it, not with their eyes, but with their hearts. They will feel the peace in your presence. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson. The Heart Sutra is not to be chanted in a temple, but to be lived in life. Not to distance ourselves from life, but to go to the very root of family and social conflicts. Every mindful step, every mindful breath, every compassionate word, all are lines in the sutra you write. And that sutra, if lived fully, will be more powerful than any book. Asterisk Chapter 7, No Enemy. For generations, humanity has been haunted by the notion of an enemy. We often think that by simply eliminating the enemy, we will find peace. But the ironic truth is, the more we try to destroy, the more enemies multiply. War follows war, hatred follows hatred, and ultimately, we never find peace. If we look deeply, we will see that the enemy doesn't truly exist. The person who hurts us, the person who sows violence, is also carrying suffering within themselves. It is that very suffering that incites them to act, and if we respond with hatred, we only fertilize the seed of violence, causing it to grow larger and spread wider. Imagine someone hitting us. The natural reaction is to want to hit back, but if we stop and ask, "Why did he hit me?" we will find the answer not in the punch, but in a deep, hidden suffering. Perhaps he was raised in violence, rejected by society, gnawed by pain for a long time. The punch is merely a desperate cry for help. If we understand this, the anger within us will subside. The teacher once attended many war conferences in tense rooms. Everyone argued, blamed, condemned, but no one truly listened to the suffering of the other side. He said there is only one weapon that can break down hatred: understanding. Because when we understand, we no longer see anyone as an enemy, but only as human beings in need of help. Having no enemy does not mean we passively allow injustice to occur. Having no enemy means we act to end injustice, but with a heart free of hatred. We struggle, but not to destroy people, but to transform the systems that cause suffering. Look at a family when a husband and wife are angry with each other. If one side views the other as an enemy, every word, every action becomes a weapon, and the home turns into a battlefield. But if one of them can breathe, look deeply, and say, "I don't see you as an enemy. I only see that you are suffering," the atmosphere immediately changes, and the conflict becomes an opportunity for healing. The biggest trap of anger is that it makes us forget this truth. The other person suffers, and so we suffer. They are a mirror reflecting our own suffering. If we stubbornly fight back, we miss the chance to heal both of us. When angry, we often see the world divided into two, us and the enemy. But in reality, both are part of an intricate network of interdependent conditions, like two flowers growing on the same tree. If one withers, the other cannot stay fresh for long. Realizing this, we will stop the illusion that we can be happy at the expense of another's pain. There is a story often told in Dharma talks. A young soldier during the Vietnam War, seeing his enemy fall before him, suddenly realized that face was no different from his younger brother's face back home. In that moment, hatred dissolved, leaving only compassion. He understood that if he had been born into the other's circumstances, grown up in fear, in that education and environment, he probably would have acted the same way. That is the wisdom of non-self and interbeing. I am the other, and the other is me. Only when we see this can we escape the shackles of the enemy concept. The practice of no enemy is not about becoming weak or passive. On the contrary, it is the greatest strength. For when there is no room for hatred in our heart, we have freedom. We can act clearly and decisively, but without our vision being obscured by the darkness of resentment. And it is precisely that action that truly has the power to transform the situation. A community where everyone looks at each other not with suspicion, but with compassionate eyes. At that point, disputes do not turn into violence, disagreements do not turn into division. Instead, they become opportunities for learning and growth. The world will change not through guns, but through hearts that no longer see anyone as an enemy. In daily life, we can practice this in very small steps. When someone flares up at us, instead of seeing them as an opponent, we try to breathe deeply and think, "This person is suffering." At that moment, we feel a softening, and from that softness, our words will be entirely different. They will no longer be an arrow, but an outstretched hand. The truth is, the greatest enemy is not outside. The greatest enemy is the seed of hatred in our own heart. If we defeat an outsider but cannot overcome the hatred within, we have not truly won. Only by transforming hatred into understanding do we become free. And so, each time we face someone who causes us suffering, we have the opportunity to write another line in our own Heart Sutra. No enemy. Each such line, accumulated, will become a living sutra, radiating to our family, our community. Until, looking back, we see how far we have come, from a person full of anger to a person who can smile even in adversity. At that moment, we understand that peace does not begin at international conferences, but with the first breath we take to smile at the one we once called an enemy. Asterisk Chapter 8, David and Angelina, the habit energy of anger asterisk. There are times when we think that anger is our own decision, but the truth is, most of our reactions are controlled by an invisible energy called habit energy. Habit energy is a deeply ingrained pattern, passed down from parents, grandparents, and the society we grew up in. It's like a path worn deep in the forest. The more you walk it, the deeper the path becomes, and the harder it is to escape. The story of David and Angelina is a clear illustration of the power of habit energy. David was a hardworking man who loved his family, but he carried a very large seed of anger within him. Whenever something displeased him, his voice immediately rose, his eyes grew sharp. He didn't mean to hurt his wife and children, but the anger within him was too strong, and he was swept away by it. Angelina, his wife, also had her own wounds. When shouted at, she immediately reacted, either crying or shouting back. Both were caught in a familiar spiral. David yelled, Angelina replied, and the conflict escalated. Afterward, both were exhausted and regretful, but then the next time, everything repeated exactly the same way. This is habit energy. It's like an underground river flowing beneath the mind's surface. With just a small trigger, that current immediately surges, sweeping us away. David was not a bad person. Angelina was not a bad person, but both were victims of the habit energy of anger. Only through mindfulness practice did they begin to see this clearly. David learned to stop when he felt anger about to erupt. Instead of yelling, he practiced deep breathing. He told his wife, "When you see me about to be swept away, please gently remind me." And Angelina also learned to identify her own habit energy. When she heard her husband's voice rise, instead of immediately reacting, she practiced silence, walked outside for a few minutes, and returned after calming down. This practice is not easy. Habit energy is like a strong wind. Once it blows, it's hard to resist. But each time you manage to stop, each time you prevent it from sweeping you away, is a victory over yourself. And with each small victory added together, the habit energy gradually weakens. People often think anger is caused by external circumstances, by a hot-tempered husband, a difficult wife, or disobedient children. But looking deeply, we see the root lies in the habit energy within. Circumstances are merely the trigger, while habit energy is the smoldering fire waiting to ignite. Understanding this helps us blame less, condemn less, and begin to accept our share of responsibility. David and Angelina went through many failures. Sometimes they still argued, still hurt each other. But the difference now was that they learned to stop sooner. Instead of letting an argument drag on all night, they could fall silent after a few minutes of breathing, then say to each other, "We are being controlled by habit energy." Just that sentence was enough to remind both to return. When they began to identify their habit energy, David and Angelina were surprised to see themselves repeating exactly what their parents had done. David recalled his father's shouting when he was a child, how his father used his voice like a whip. Angelina recognized the shadow of her mother, who would often burst into tears or react violently whenever hurt. It turned out they were merely reenacting an old play, whose script had been written generations ago. Mindfulness practice helped them realize they had the power to end this play. They did not have to pass it on to their children. Every time David was about to yell, if he managed to stop, he wrote a new scene for his family's script. Every time Angelina remained silent and breathed instead of reacting, she also contributed a new line. And these new stories would be received by their children so that in the future, they could grow up in a less violent environment. Habit energy is like a strong wind. We cannot stop it from blowing, but we can learn how to stand firm. When the wind rises, instead of chasing it, we cling to our breath, cling to our steps. Each breath is an anchor, each step is a rope that holds us back. Gradually, we no longer fear the wind because we know we have the ability to stand still. Angelina recounted that there were times she still wanted to shout back, but instead of yelling, she chose to write a letter. In the letter, she wrote, "I am suffering, but I know you are suffering too. I don't want this habit energy to destroy us." David read those lines in silence, and instead of becoming defensive, he felt his heart soften because the letter did not accuse, but only shared. And it was that sharing that opened the path to reconciliation. This practice did not turn David and Angelina into perfect people. They still had moments of anger, still got stuck. But the difference was that now they knew they had a choice. They were no longer completely controlled by habit energy, and each time they overcame it, they found a deep joy, the joy of freedom. For true freedom is not being able to do whatever you want. True freedom is the ability not to be controlled by the past and by habit energy, the ability to say no to the old loop and yes to a new way of reacting. Everyone has habit energy, everyone gets swept away at times. But if we know how to stop, breathe, and recognize it, we can end that vicious cycle. We can transform ourselves from victims into scriptwriters. And when one person changes, the whole family changes. When a family changes, society as a whole benefits. Chapter 9. Embracing anger with mindfulness. Anger is like a child crying uncontrollably in the night. If we brush it aside or scold it, it will cry even louder. But if we pick it up, hold it close to our heart, the crying will gradually subside. Anger within us is the same. It doesn't need to be suppressed, nor does it need to erupt violently. It just needs to be embraced with mindful breathing. Whenever anger flares up, we often want to act immediately, say a sharp word, cast a cold glance, or break something. But it is precisely then that we need to remember that every action taken in anger can leave lasting wounds. Therefore, the wisest thing to do is to stop. Stop to breathe, stop to walk, stop to recognize. Try sitting down, placing your hand on your belly, breathing in deeply, breathing out slowly. You can whisper, "Hello, anger, I know you are present in me." Just that much is enough to calm the anger. Because anger is like a child that needs to be acknowledged. When you call it by its name, it feels seen and is no longer as aggressive as before. If sitting still is too difficult, you can walk. Each step is an embrace for yourself. Step in, I know I am angry. Step out, I embrace my anger with compassion. These steps are like arms, gradually encompassing the fire within so it burns less fiercely. Anger needs time to ripen, like a raw potato. If we want to eat it immediately, it will only be hard and bitter. Only when cooked long enough does it become nutritious. Likewise, anger needs at least 15-20 minutes of being embraced by breath and steps to ripen and become understanding. Many people fear anger, so they try to ignore it or suppress it, but buried anger only becomes smoldering embers, making the soul feel hot. Others release anger through violence, only to regret it for a lifetime. Both approaches hurt us. There is only one path: embrace it with all the gentleness of a mother embracing her child. When we embrace anger, we are not weak at all. On the contrary, it is the greatest strength, the strength of mindfulness. Because only when mindful do we have the capacity to contain the fire within so it doesn't consume everything. And when the fire has calmed, we can look deeply to see the root of anger. Once anger has subsided thanks to breath and steps, we can begin to look deeply. Anger often clouds our eyes, making us see only the other person's faults. But when breath has calmed the flame, we have the opportunity to shine a light into our own heart. We see that anger doesn't just arise in the present, but also from old wounds. Sometimes, just one sentence from someone is enough to stir up pain we thought we had forgotten. If we can patiently sit with anger like this, we will gradually discover a truth. Behind anger is suffering. Anger does not exist on its own. Anger is merely the cry for help of suffering. When we see this clearly, compassion rises within us. Instead of wanting to punish the other person, we want to help them. We are holding a child with a high fever. We don't hate it for being hot and crying. We certainly don't blame it. We only want to find a way to soothe it. Anger also needs to be held by us in the same way. When we embrace anger with mindfulness, anger transforms into an object of care, not of punishment. During practice, we can silently say, "Anger, I know you are here. I will take care of you. I will not let you cause suffering to me and others." Just that promise creates a safe distance between ourselves and anger. We are no longer completely controlled by it. And when we are patient enough, a miracle happens. We begin to see the suffering in the other person. We understand that they, too, are hurt, also guided by habit energy. It is precisely because they suffer that they make us suffer. Understanding this, we no longer see them as an enemy. And at that very moment, anger transforms into compassion. Embracing anger with mindfulness is not a one-time thing. It needs to be practiced every day. Each time we are angry, we breathe, we walk, we remind ourselves, this is just a mental formation. It will pass. And each time, we gain a little more freedom from blind reaction, freedom from habit energy, freedom from the cycle of suffering. That freedom is the greatest gift we can give ourselves and our loved ones. For once we know how to embrace anger, we will no longer let it consume love, friendship, or trust. Instead, we transform anger into material for nurturing understanding. And understanding, once present, opens the door to love. Chapter 10, Mindful Breathing. There is a very delicate but incredibly sturdy bridge that connects us to peace. That is our breath. Whenever anger takes over, our mind is swept away like a boat in a storm. But simply remembering to return to a mindful breath, we drop an anchor to the seabed, preventing the boat from being swept away. Our breath naturally happens, but we often forget it. We breathe as if not breathing. Only when we are in panic or fear do we notice our breath becoming rapid and shallow. But our breath can become our closest friend if we know how to invite it back with awareness. Breathe in, I know I am breathing in. Breathe out, I know I am breathing out. Just that. We are fully present with ourselves. And when we are truly present, anger no longer has full control. Mindful breathing first affects the body. When we are angry, our facial muscles tense, our shoulders hunch, our stomach tightens. We don't realize we are in a fight or flight state. But when we bring our attention to our breath, we notice each tensing part of our body. We breathe out and relax, release our shoulders, our jaw, our clenched fists. As the body softens, the mind also calms down. Anger can be compared to a fire, and mindful breathing is a stream of cool water. Each breath is a scoop of water poured onto that fire. Initially, the fire still burns, but if we continue to breathe, scoop by scoop, eventually the fire will subside. The breath is also a smile. Perhaps we are not yet happy enough to smile, but we can smile with our breath. Breathe in, I recognize the anger. Breathe out, I smile at it. This smile is not fake, but a gesture of compassion for ourselves. We don't need to wait until we are sitting in meditation to breathe mindfully. We can breathe when washing dishes, when driving, when the phone rings. Each time we breathe like that, we are sowing a seed of peace. And when those seeds of peace are numerous enough, they will become a solid ground for us to stand on whenever storms arrive. The practice of mindful breathing is not to escape anger, but to create enough space to look directly at it. When we breathe, anger does not disappear instantly, but it no longer controls us. We can observe it like observing a cloud drifting across the sky. If you are angry, instead of rushing into an argument, step outside, walk slowly in the garden, and breathe. Each step is a breath. Breathe in, I see I am angry. Breathe out, I see I am still alive. Just that thought, I am still alive, is enough to bring us back to the present, where anger is no longer our entire being. The breath helps us recognize anger, and recognition is the first step of transformation, just like calling a baby by name. Baby, I am here. The baby feels safe, cries less. When we silently say in our heart, hello, anger, I know you are here. Anger also calms down in the same way. The practice of mindful breathing also helps us connect with the beautiful things that are present. Anger makes us forget the blue sky, forget the birds singing, forget the presence of loved ones. But when we breathe, we suddenly realize that flowers still bloom, the sun is still golden, and within us there are still seeds of peace. That makes anger lose its overwhelming power. Someone asked, how long does it take to breathe away anger? The answer is, as long as it takes, as long as you continue to breathe. Sometimes in just 15 minutes anger dissolves, sometimes it takes longer. But the important thing is that throughout that time, we don't hurt anyone, don't say bitter words, don't do things we'll regret. Gradually, the breath becomes a companion. Each time anger stirs, we are ready to invite our friend back. Come, breathe with me. And so, we are no longer alone in our anger. The most miraculous thing about mindful breathing is that it brings us back to ourselves. When angry, we are often swept away by what the other person says, what the other person does. But the breath reminds us, return, the home of peace is right within you. And when we return, we realize we are much larger than our anger. Chapter 11, Restoring the Pure Land. Many people think of the Pure Land as a distant realm, achievable only after death, a place beyond human reach. But in truth, the Pure Land has never left us. It is always present in every breath, every step, every flower, every cloud. It is only because our eyes are clouded by anger, resentment, and ambition that we can no longer see it. Try stepping into a garden early in the morning. Dew still clings to the leaves, birds are singing, the sky is clear blue. If we truly stop, take a deep breath, and acknowledge all of that, that moment is the Pure Land. But if our mind is filled with storms, if we only see unfinished work, if we only hear the noise in our head, then even paradise turns into hell. The Pure Land is not a place to escape to, but a quality of mind. When our mind is at peace, when we breathe mindfully, smile mindfully, then the Pure Land manifests. But if we allow anger, hatred, and jealousy to control us, then the house we live in becomes hell. Many people seek happiness in a distant future, when they are more successful, wealthier, when they achieve this or that. But in that pursuit, we lose the present moment, and the present moment is the only place where life exists. Restoring the Pure Land means restoring our ability to live right now, to see the miraculous things present within our grasp. Imagine a family that knows how to listen to each other, how to speak loving words, how to sit together in peace. That home, no matter how small, is a pure land. But if the house is filled with arguments and blame, then even in a palace, we are still living in hell. The Pure Land is not found in books, but in how we walk through each day. When we walk on the street and are aware that we are walking, without rushing, without distraction, then every step that touches the earth is a step in the Pure Land. When we eat a simple meal and realize that the rice is made of rain and sun, of the sweat of countless farmers, then every bite is a miracle. The Pure Land can be restored in every community when people sit together in meditation, breathe together, and maintain silence for a few minutes. That space immediately becomes a Pure Land. It doesn't need to be adorned with gold or splendor. Only collective mindfulness is needed, and any place transforms into beautiful ground. We often think we must leave where we are, go seeking another land to find happiness. But if we carry anger and ambition within us, then wherever we go, we will only continue to build hell. But if we know how to stop, how to breathe, how to smile, then right in our small room, the Pure Land is already present. Every time anger arises, we can try to look around. A flower on the table, a ray of sun piercing the window, a breath going in and out. All are open doors to the Pure Land. They remind us that life is still miraculous, and we don't need to wait for some afterlife to have paradise. Restoring the Pure Land also means restoring the sacredness in human connection. When we know how to sit and listen to our loved ones, how to speak loving words, how to touch each other's hands in silence, then that moment is the manifestation of the Pure Land, no elaborate rituals needed. Genuine presence itself is the miracle. In a community, when everyone practices together, the collective energy becomes a garden. Every smile, every glance, every mindful step sows seeds of peace into the space. Stepping into such a community, we clearly feel we are living in the Pure Land, right in this world. The truth is, the Pure Land has never been absent. We just need to clear away the blind dust of anger and greed, and the Pure Land appears immediately. It's like the moon always being there, only hidden by clouds. Clear the clouds and we see the bright moon. Return to the breath and we see the Pure Land. And so, restoring the Pure Land is not an act for the future, but a choice in the present. In every moment, we can turn life into hell or heaven. The key lies in mindfulness, a mindful breath, a sincere smile, a compassionate gaze. These are the bricks that build the Pure Land, and if we know how to lay each of these bricks every day, we won't need to search far. The home of peace has already been built right in our hearts and around us.